Welcome to the Sonic Collective, a music podcast that explores a different album or musical concept each month, diving deep into its history, context, and impact on the music industry. Join our hosts, Alan, Scott, and Darren Scott, that's way too many Scotts, as they share their thoughts, insights, and personal connections to the music, inviting you, the listener, to discover new perspectives and appreciation for some of the greatest albums and music of all time. Hello and welcome back to the Sonic Collective. I am Darren Scott and I'm joined with all the members, including our newest member, Owen Pearson. I've got Scott Gregory and Alan Dupuis here in Calgary with Owen and I as well. And we've got Scott Coates across the pond in Bangkok, Thailand. And I am Darren Scott. I am talking because this past month, was my pick. And I had recently gone to a concert with Mike Campbell and the Dirty Knobs. That is the former guitar player for Tom Petty. He was in the Heartbreakers, but Mike Campbell wrote a lot of the Tom Petty songs. I shouldn't say a lot, but quite a few. Helped, and his band were super tight, super amazing. Steve Ferrone, the drummer for Tom Petty's band, the Heartbreakers, also in that band. It was actually Owen, our newest member's father, I was with, and it was just a great concert. And they closed the concert by playing Sundown by Gordon Lightfoot. And Nashville singer, this woman came out and sang it with him, like high parts, low parts. Oh my God, it was stunning. It was such a good, cool experience. And I admitted, if you listen to the last episode, I really didn't, I'm a bad Canadian, I think. I just really didn't give Gordon Lightfoot a lot of time as much as I like music. I heard some of the hits. I'd heard Sundown before. You Can Read My Mind, If You Could Read My Mind. Wreck of the Edmonds Fitzgerald. I think all those big songs, they're big. Everybody would probably know them. Probably little kids would be able to identify maybe that who that was because their dad likes it. But anyway, I hadn't really given any attention, but that song blew my mind. If you could read my mind, you'd know it blew my mind. And I immediately went home and I put it on a playlist and I didn't really think much of it, but then my pick came up for this group and I was struggling and I decided last second, I'm like, you know what? That concert came to my head. I'm going to pick Gordon Lightfoot. I smoked a bit of a joint about an hour and a half before we recorded the episode, and it just, I listened to it, and even in that moment, maybe I was in the right mind space, but I just thought it was a beautiful sounding, stunning album, and his guitar playing and everything like that just, again, blew my mind. So I picked him, but I hadn't really listened to anything. I definitely hadn't listened to this Sundown album. So it came out in 1974 when Gordon Lightfoot, I think it was his 10th album. So that's crazy. You'd think he must be new. That was his big one. Or sorry, ninth? Okay, sorry, corrected. Thank you, Alan. There's fingers everywhere on the screen. But I was like, I heard this is one of his best ones, his most successful. I'm going to pick it. And again, I gave it a little listen, was stunned. I picked it. But in this group, we always like to throw it to the others. I want to find out what everybody else thought of this. So let's start with our newest member, Owen Pearson. What did you think? This is way past your age range, even mine, but let me know what you thought.
Of course. It was a roller coaster for me. I thought I was pretty well nursed in the sound of music, and throughout kind of the 70s, 80s, 90s, I've listened to quite a bit of music. But like you were just saying, I never really took the time to listen to Sundown by Gordon Lightfoot until this past month. And to be honest, I couldn't connect to it in the right way that I wanted to. It might just be because of my lifestyle these days. I'm super busy. I'm moving, and I'm trying to really get my head around the new life of Owen Pearson. But when it came to this album, I just couldn't adapt to the sound. And this is not taking away from the beautiful Canadian indie sound of Gordon Lightfoot. I think he is a very well-respected artist in that sort of genre and throughout music. People like Bob Dylan, Johnny Cash, and they've covered him before. They've respected his music throughout time. So I did take that into consideration. I just didn't really know how to get involved with the sound. So after listening to Sundown, I went back into the archives and checked out that album, If You Could Read My Mind, from 1970, as well as Summertime Dream, the one after in 1976. And I found a connection to those in a certain way. It might have been the sound, it might have been his mentality at the time. I just kind of connected with that more, which is hard to say because Sundown is his biggest album. If you look at the numbers, they don't lie. So because of that, I don't know. I've been thinking about what to say for a long time now, and I listened to the album about 3 or 4 times, and I just can't really get around the just the mentality of it. The best part about the album, the thing that I did really connect with in a way, was the lyrics, though. Minus the instrumental, minus the sound of 1974, I did like the story. And if you listen to Gordon Lightfoot and everything he's done in the past, he tells the best story. One of my favorite songs is one of his biggest, The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. We all know that song. That was probably the first Gordon Lightfoot song I heard. And that story is amazing. It's Canadian culture. It's a true story. It's a sad story. And he does produce great lyrics. I just think the overall sound of Sundown it just wasn't for me. And 1974 was a great year. There was a lot of albums that came out of that year. Like, you're looking at Queen, Guns and not Guns. I'm talking about Leonard Skinner.
Close.
Leonard Skinner, not
Yeah.
Guns N' Roses. And there was I think there was better production at the time. And maybe in 1974, Canadian music wasn't at its full kind of production level. I know he recorded this album in Ontario, so maybe that had something to do with it. But overall, I couldn't really vibe. But I'm not going to repeat myself again. I won't take away from the culture and the legendary status of Gordon Lightfoot. But overall, it just wasn't really for me. Now, after all that said, I'm going to hand it over to Alan.
Cool. Thanks, Owen. Appreciate your take on that. I think there's a lot of parallels between your assessment and mine, but some notable differences. I felt like I was on a bit of a journey this month. Initially, like when Darren first announced that our pick of the month was going to be Gordon Lightfoot's Sundown, I got really excited. While I can't say I've ever really purposely listened to much of Gordon Lightfoot's music, I do know the song Sundown. It was featured in a movie that I watched a few years back starring Matthew McConaughey called The Beach Bum, which, by the way, is a really awesome soundtrack, and you should all check it out. But anyway, after seeing the song Sundown in that movie, I added it to a few different playlists. So, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, as I dove in for the first time to listen to a full Lightfoot album, it kind of slowly dawned on me that maybe I just wasn't feeling the music as much as I expected to, based on the expectations that the song Sundown had created for me. I don't know. I guess it simply comes down to personal preference. Folksy acoustic music really has never been my thing. And upon further reflection, I think that the songs from Gordon Lightfoot that I am fond of, like the aforementioned Sundown and his song If You Could Read My Mind, which is from a different album. But those songs have become kind of culturally significant over the last few decades. And so maybe just due to familiarity, I kind of came in with a warm opinion of those songs by default, right? So at first, the album didn't do much for me. But the more I listened to it, the more it did start to grow on me. This is the kind of music that I can certainly appreciate purely for the artistry, even if it's not something that I would necessarily be inclined to listen to, say, alone in the car on a commute or something. But I do think there's probably a time and a place for this style of music somewhere in my life, right? I can pick and choose certain tracks from this album, and a few of them even got stuck in my head, which is usually a good sign, right? I'll just call out a couple. Is There Anyone Home? The Watchman's Gone, The List, and of course, Sundown. I mean, those for me were kind of standout tracks.
Not Carefree Highway, though? You didn't like that one?
It was okay. I didn't dislike any song on this album, which is also pretty important for me to stress. Some albums we review, there are songs that I just like get an itchy trigger finger to hit the skip button. Nothing like that on this album. I just didn't feel like it necessarily connected with me on like a, I don't know, like a cathartic level, and that's okay, because there is a lot still to appreciate about Gordon Lightfoot and this album in particular. For example, like Gordon has a really unique voice, and he used it skillfully. Lyrically, Owen, to your point, like I think he is an incredibly, or was, I should say, I guess he was an incredibly gifted storyteller. He could really paint like an emotionally charged picture just through words alone, which is an admirable skill for sure. And then you couple that sort of storytelling and his unique way of approaching his lyrics and his vocals with like this beautiful 12-string guitar tone, and you know you're kind of onto something at that point. The backing band, super skillful. They applied their craft really well with regards to the instrumentation, particularly the bass. I felt that the bass was really strong, you know, and nothing was like super complicated or anything. It's just all really well constructed, tight music. There's also a diversity of instruments being used from track to track, which I appreciated because like there was certainly cohesion sonically between each song, but like they all sounded a little different. They all sounded a little unique, and that's why so many of them kind of stood out as earworms or whatever. And I mean, dude, the song Circle of Steel had a friggin' recorder on it. How often do you hear a recorder in a professionally produced album, right? So that was pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, guys, singer-songwriter music is just, it's not my jam. It's never been my jam. And neither really is it's the same for folk music. Like, it's not the vibe for me. But, you know, I do think between Gordon Lightfoot's vocal style and his songwriting, the talent of the band, and honestly, I think the production on this was really good. Like, oh, and I don't have a background in this, so maybe I'm dead wrong, but I thought the producer, whose name was Lenny Waronker, I think he really helped make all of these voices and these instruments kind of come together and sound cohesive. I thought it sounded pretty solid. And while I can't say this, I'm going to make a claim that, you know, might be a little biased, but I do think this album stands head and shoulders above other music from this genre in this era. And I mean, the numbers kind of back up that claim because this was his 9th studio album and it was by far his best-selling album. So yeah, anyway, to sum that all up, there's a pretty high probability that I'm probably going to come back to at least a few of the tracks on this album. And for me, that's generally a sign of a successful Sonic Collective album review. So with that, let me throw it over to Scott Gregory.
Thank you. So now I can push back against both of you at the same time, you young whippersnappers. How dare you? First of all, a Canadian how dare you, Owen. I just quickly looked up Canadian albums released in 1974, and they include the artists Joni Mitchell, Gordon Lightfoot, Bachman Turner Overdrive, Rush, and the Guess Who, as well as Anne Murray and Bruce Cockburn. Shame on you, sir. Shame on you.
Those are great artists. I
let him down
them.
easy. He's young.
And Alan?
Yes.
Taylor Swift is a singer-songwriter. How do you feel about that?
I can respect Taylor Swift, but I don't identify as a Swiftie.
Oh. All right. Gordon Lightfoot, Sundown, 1974. I was not born yet, but I might have been conceived to this album. It's close enough in time. It would have been fresh on the radio.
Which song would it have been to, do you think?
That's a very good question. Maybe Too Late for Prayer, considering there was only a month between when I was born and when my parents were married. So, 10 songs, 36 minutes. Folk is now battling punk for the shortest playtime on our list here. I've mentioned in previous streams that my mom worked in a radio station as its country music director. And not only did that mean that I spent a lot of time in the record room as advertised before, but my mom also did love to bring her work home with her. I've listened not only to a lot of Kenny Rogers and Loretta Lynn, but Canadian artists such as Joni Mitchell, Ian Tyson, Anne Murray, and of course, Gordon Lightfoot. There's a lot of crossover between the singing slash storytelling of country and folk music, as both Owen and Alan have already called out, and it's very evident here. This isn't the twangy version, mind you. It's more of like a Chris Christopherson storytelling. If you've ever listened to him, if you haven't, I highly recommend, especially if you like this album. The music is good. I won't really say a lot about that. Thank you, Alan, for going into it so deeply, because I would probably agree with everything that you said there. I thought it was good. Just nothing really stood out for me. And that's maybe, I don't want to call it a criticism of folk music, but they definitely focus a lot more on the lyrics and the storytelling, which I like. It's kind of the thing, right? So, but with the music, I tend to go, oh, that's nice, to whatever they put. And then I keep listening. When a particularly good melody comes along, though, I'll cheer for it. But otherwise, it just feels a little formulaic after a while in folk music. That being said, lyrics and story on this one. This album has a couple major themes, and that's what I'm going to focus on when I'm talking about these songs. But before that, this is a Canadian album, and so we definitely had your standard Canadian album mentions of snow, the sea or islands or a bay, and open highways. You cannot have a Canadian folk album without those things being said. The major themes that I found most strongly was there was the social commentary one in Circle of Steel, where he's talking about the desperation of the poor, juxtaposed against this happy Christmas scene. It's a mother about to lose her child. The desperation really comes through. It's timeless. It's as relevant today as it was then. And I think that demonstrates a strength that Gordon Lightfoot has. He does find these timeless themes. He can speak to a broad audience who, if they can't sympathize at that point, will hopefully empathize with them. Too Late for Prayer. I think this is a beautiful song, and it might be my favorite one on the album. There's an obvious religious tone to it, but I don't think it's reserved for just people who are like spiritual. There's a yearning for innocence lost here and the death of dreams that everyone can share. Even people that are, have it fairly well, there's forks in the road that take us away from what could have been, if it's a romantic partner, a dream of being in a rock band, a parent seeing their grandchildren, things like that. And I think what I like about this song is that it surfaces those thoughts and feelings, but it doesn't try to give an everything is going to be okay message. It's not always going to be okay, and nothing in the tone of this song says it will. There's an honesty to stopping short like that. And sure, for some, it might dredge up old wounds, but the real hope is that people will start dealing with their emotions and, come to some form of catharsis and maybe even take action on getting their dreams back. Of course, relationships are always a big theme in folk music. Sundown, titular track. It's a nice, airy song. It's easy to hum along to. Darren might get into the interesting story that comes along with that, where it's about his groupie, Kathy Smith, doing drugs with her, wondering about her faithfulness, and trivia. I'm going to steal a piece of trivia. She's the one who gave John Belushi the drugs that killed him, and was convicted and went to jail for it. So kind of interesting parallel there. Carefree Highway, as a man of a certain age, and this might be where, like Owen and I bridge away from each other a little bit as far as like just how we connected with this album. I really vibed with it, but I think until you're like 30, 40, 50, the idea of being able to think back on those relationships past, particularly ones in the more innocent phases of our lives. Owen's still in the innocent phase of his life. And it's funny how you eventually remember that innocence and the feelings, but you really forget the details. Like even in this, like faces, last names, things like that. And I think this song, above all the others, really shows the power of folk music to touch someone's soul. It's not always going to hit everyone the same, all right? And a lot is rooted in that shared experience. And I think that this song will eventually speak to almost everyone given enough time. Oh, in 15 years from now, you're going to be like, damn, I remember that girl and I miss her. Oh, what could have been.
Yeah, that's true.
But you are probably in the easy loving phase of your life, which is The List. It's a nice little carefree song about some carefree dating. And it's still pretty innocent, right? Like, hey, let's get together and see what happens. Maybe it's just for the night, but maybe it's the start of something more. And it's not much more to it than that. And I don't think it needs to be. And that's why folk albums can get it down to under 40 minutes, right? Like songs can just have one solid theme and message. Get in, bang, get out. Overall, I really enjoyed this album. I don't know if I'll go back to it too many times, though. I don't really go back to folk music too often at the full album level. I'll probably just mine it for a couple of the songs. But it was a nice change for the month. Anyone that wants a good look at high-quality 70s folk music by an extremely talented Canadian artist, look no further. It's a great entry point into the genre that doesn't get too political, because there was some political stuff going on at that point. It isn't overly autobiographical, and it really strives to build a connection with the listeners, I think. Scott C., what did you think?
Yeah, thanks. That was deep. I'm not so sure I can follow it up, Scott Gregory, to your quality and standard. But, yeah, interesting to hear the different opinions on this one. Darren, I did listen to the Mike Campbell album after you mentioned it, and I thought it was pretty good. Sounds a lot like Tom Petty, but I guess he played with him. I was 1 year old when this came out, and it got me thinking. It's pretty neat that we've grown up in a time where technology for the most part has been good enough that things sound good 50 years later, right? Like you think of Dark Side of the Moon and a lot of old albums, whereas stuff from the 50s generally didn't sound very good. So I thought this album really sounded good. He's no MGK, that is for sure, or MCG, I can tell you that. But you guys mentioned folk music. It's funny, I never thought of it as folk music, but then I'm like, yeah, this is solidly folk music, and I'm definitely not a folk music guy at all. And I can't put my finger on why, but this was dreamy, and time just melted away each time I put it on. I have no idea why. All of a sudden, I just realized, oh, the album's over again. But the production, Alan mentioned it, I think is super good on it. I mean, you hear strings and full orchestras in the background, and his vocals are smooth, and the guitars are great. And I really don't follow lyrics often, but I made an attempt here. Circle of Steel, I thought was pretty good. Really sad working class feel. But then I was like, is this a Christmas song too? Because there was Deck the Halls thrown in there. Yes. Occasionally I'm like
the Pogues, right?
Yeah, and then in the next minute it would not be a Christmas song. So I'm like, oh, it must have been my imagination. And then there'd be bells and Deck the Halls again. So I'm like, oh, that's the only one I'm like, I'm not sure what he was trying to achieve on that one. I don't think he got either. The Watchman's Gone, really like this one. Sundown I knew before, but I did actually really listen to the lyrics. And like, in a room where you do what you don't confess, I thought that lyric, I'm like, ooh, that's dark. And then You Better Take Care If I Find You Creeping Around My Back Stairs, but that's where it kind of ended. So I'm like, oh, is this cheating going on? Or, yeah, what is it? I imagine someone trying to sneak in the back room. Carefree Highway really stood out to me. So, yeah, I mean, I can't put my finger beyond almost what I've shared why I liked it, right? But the choruses, I just thought the layering of the sounds, man, it was just smooth and good. Smooth is the word I keep going back to. And you know, Owen, I thought of a few Canadian bands, and Scott Gregory called them out. But it was huge, as I realized Canada's always had a few big international musicians, you know, at any one time that are popular. And we kind of think of the U.S. as if you're popular. But, like, yeah, you mentioned them. Joni Mitchell, Neil Young, the Guess Who, the band. All these bands, I mean, were huge, and not just Canadian bands, but North American and international bands. So I'll leave it at that. But, man, I really, this one surprised me. I thought I was going to go to sleep and think it was a steaming turd. I probably won't come back to it very often, kind of like you said, Scott Gregory, but I'm impressed. Like, I get now why he's regarded as a legend. It was a really solid album in all respects. Over to you, Darren.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I appreciate all the input. And Alan brought it up, but I mean, we did review, and I picked it too, Bob Dylan. Maybe I have a thing. And it didn't get well liked by several of you in that folk genre. And this is right in there too. And you're right, Scott. I mean, by this time, 1974, this album's kind of on the folks kind of metamorphosizing into something new. Traditional folk really was you had a guitar and you got up and you sang, and that was it. The Grand Ole Opry to this day pretty much has relaxed a bit, but they still operate like that a lot. I think it was Johnny Cash. Is it the Ring of Fire? Doom chicka doom chicka doom chicka, whatever song that is.
Folsom Prison Blues.
That sound.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh my God, I just had a total brain fart there. Thank you. But that sound was actually made by he put a dollar bill through his guitar strings and hit it hard to make it sound like a drum, because that was the only way he wanted some percussion at the Grand Ole Opry when he would perform the song. So he had to do it on a guitar. Very traditionalist. If you watch the Bob Dylan documentary, the Newport Folk Festival, he blew everybody's mind and got booed off the stage because he used an electric guitar. And that was like a big thing. So even pure folk artists, fans, often, at the time, I guess, criticized this album too, saying, no, he's using all these crazy instruments. This guy's crazy. This isn't folk music. But, that aside, I mean, this is 1974. Gordon Lightfoot, as mentioned, I didn't know much about him, but born in 1938 in Orillia, Ontario, Canada. His middle name is Meredith. I caught that. I'm like, I don't know if I've ever known a guy with a Meredith name. And hey, whatever, man. Like, that's cool. But, he was such a legend that after that, only 90-year-old women could use it, I guess. But, I guess his mom supported him. His dad was kind of like, yeah, good luck, buddy. But he was a bit of a prodigy. So he was in contest. He was in his church choir. He won a U13 Kiwanis contest on Massey Hall stage. I guess he performed in Massey Hall stage like 170 times. That was his first time. And he won 2 years in a row for singing. So he was well known in Canada and kind of this child prodigy that he also decided to stay in Canada. So at the time, this is before the Canadian content laws, which we've talked a lot about on this podcast, that really Canadian artists, if they were good, pretty much had to move to Nashville, New York, or LA, sign in the States, and pray to God that they would play back in Canada, because Canada just did not support our own artists. We just took all the radio from Britain and the BBC or the US and just repurposed it. But thank God for Canadian content laws. But Gordon Lightfoot, he established himself young, worked very hard, worked in Toronto off Yonge Street, would do the folk and guitars and cafes and anything he could do to kind of build up. So that's kind of how he started. Really started as a songwriter. His songs got noticed by like Sylvia and Ian Tyson. That he met them in Toronto, ended up becoming friends with them. They recorded a song that went really big in the States. Marty Robbins had a #1 country hit with his song in the States. So it was a very, it was a ribbon of darkness that Marty Robbins got #1 at. But he got known as this really famous songwriter, but he wasn't actually recording his own stuff. So it was later on that he got into that. Anyway, let's jump ahead into this album. Again, I didn't really know it. I told you I got a little bit high, listened to that first night. I got into it. Good way to do it. Just close your eyes, get into the music, put yourself in that kind of flow state, and very cool. I mean, it is very relaxing. And I think everybody here, I don't think anybody said like, oh yeah, it was hard, difficult to get through, and maybe not your style, but you got to admit the music and the melodies and the instrumentation and the sound and the production, it's top notch. It's a beautiful sounding album. It really is. And it is mellow. That is one of the criticisms, that it is very, very mellow. And I've said many times, I'm usually not into slower albums, but I think I've realized, I think the songwriters and just, the true legends, especially, when they're doing it, I think of Tom Petty, Wildflowers. And, like such a beautiful album, but a lot of mellower stuff, which I wouldn't be into. But, I mean, I just thought it sounded great. Each song I thought flowed well in the other. They do sound similar at times. One thing I really like, and I think it was Miles Davis, said this. I mean, obviously a jazz genius, but he said he would write songs and he would think about where there wasn't sound. He would say he would like leave room for space. It's like if in the design world, I know Alan and Scott Gregory and Scott Coates, and we've worked in that, and that, it's really, the proper use of white space and letting designs breathe and giving space to, the creation and the art. And that's something that is getting lost. And I mean, even though we said MGK's album, that first Tickets to My Downfall, was very well sounded and well produced, it is full of sound. If you go back at the wall of sound type of production that actually started in the 70s, or actually 60s. But I mean, I felt this album, and actually it was criticized by folk fans, but really the sound, you could just hear that guitar so clearly. And Alan, you mentioned something about the artistry and the songwriting, and and I thought too, and it's like, it may not be your total jam, but I love live music too, but if I went and I sat down and you just see a flamenco guitarist, and you don't know the song, it might not be something you listen to, but you just watch and you're in the moment, and you're like, holy shit, this guy can play, and that sounds beautiful. That's kind of where I'm at with Gordon Lightfoot. I mean, he has a pleasing voice too. He holds as well, and again, I really felt he left that space, and it's just, especially in modern music, you don't hear that as much. It just always gets filled with, throw a synth in there or something here. It's just like, I like that space, and you could actually hear the notes ring out in the guitars. On that too, he's been with the same band for a long time, but Red Shea and Terry Clements on guitars with him as well, very well known. He also was known to have just an extraordinary band that basically stayed with him his whole career as well. I mean, I loved it. I have a million more facts, but I don't think I have to go much further. I'll come back with a few at the end, but let's go back to the scores, guys. So let's score this up on recommendation, influence, and your overall. Back to the beginning with Owen.
Thanks, Darren. I appreciate that. Speaking of Red Shea, he's from Prince Albert, which is kind of cool. So I'm gonna get some history.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
Yeah, I was reading that today, and it came full circle to me. Influence, I'm gonna give this a 3. I think it was very personable. I know I wouldn't say hated on it initially, but I had some strong feelings towards the overall sound of the album, and I'm still going to stay with that. But I do think the influential aspect of this album is phenomenal. Like I said, the lyrics are top tier. I think that's what really sold it for me. So yes, Influence 3. Recommend, I'm going to go with a 4.5. I think this album should be recommended to more people when it comes to Canadian music from the 70s. I think, although it is more of a slower folk indie style, and it might be harder for some people to get through, it is only 10 songs. I think you can do it and really listen to the storyline of Gordon Lightfoot. So with that, overall, I'm going to give it a solid 4 out of 5 for me. And I'm going to send it over to Alan.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, dude. This is all personal preference, right? I definitely wasn't sure about this album on the first run. And then, by the end of the month, it had really grown on me for different reasons. And Darren, to your point, like, yeah, man, if I'm watching a flamenco guitarist play flamenco, like, that's not in my wheelhouse whatsoever, but I'm going to appreciate it for what it is. I think there's a time and a place for this album, just like anything else. Overall, I'm giving this a 3.75 out of 5. And to just break that down a little bit more, for recommendation, I'm going high on this one, 4.5 out of 5. I figure everyone, particularly speaking to the Canadians out there, but everyone should probably listen to this album, if only to experience a true Canadian classic and see what the hype is all about for yourself. All about for yourself, I should say, to be topical with the whole Canadian thing. Yeah, influence. My notes say 2.5, but I like what you said, Owen, about the lyrical mastery. I'm going to do a last-minute change to 2.75 out of 5. Like, Gordon Lightfoot probably doesn't directly influence me, but now that I'm thinking about it, like, as someone who's trying to make my own music, like, maybe I should go and study the way he approaches songwriting and lyrics and stuff, because he can certainly spin a tale that compels you, right? So Maybe he does influence me more than I realized. But the other thing is, you really can't deny who else he has been influential to, right? I can't remember who mentioned it, but it was earlier in the podcast, like Elvis Presley, Bob Dylan, Johnny Cash, like those guys, all of whom were, by the way, past subjects of the Sonic Collective. But they're legends in their own right. So for them to cover Gordon Lightfoot is a pretty big deal. So, yeah, those are my numbers. And let's hear from Scott Gregory.
Thanks. Yeah, the album was produced by Reprise Records, which was founded by Frank Sinatra. It was an American production company, right? So I think there was a lot that was brought to bear on making sure the quality was in there, right? Like the money wasn't lacking on that front. It's not like a nickel record cutting place in the back of a Toronto record shop somewhere. It sounds great. I think it stands the test of time in a lot of ways. Influence, we always have that double-edged, is it how it influenced us or is it how it influenced everyone around them? And I try and balance that. And it was definitely influential in the earlier part of my life. It was played. This type of music was played a lot. It really set standards for me as far as what to expect from the lyrics from albums, which is funny because I fell into Stone Temple Pilots, out of this stuff. The second I could afford headphones and the CD of my own. Recommendation, influence, I'll give it a 4. Recommendation, I'm going to give it a 4.5. I think it's a top folk album. It's a top Canadian album at that point. Strong songwriting. Everyone's spoken well of the production. And to what Darren had said before, I think this is right before Gordon started adding things like synth and other more contemporary sounds into his music, which isn't a bad thing. But if you're looking for a snapshot of that, in-between period of just pure guitars and the influence of the 80s starting to really appeal to people and creating expectations in folk as well, I think this is right on that last line there. So it's a good choice all around on that front. So 4 and 4.5, I'm going to round up for the Canadian home field advantage and give it an overall of 4.5. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, I'm pretty close to all of you guys. I struggle with influence because at this point, is it going to change my direction in musical taste? No. But you know what? I think I'm going to finally go and listen to a band I've been meaning to, The Band. And I realize I've also never listened to a Joni Mitchell album. And I'm pretty sure I've listened to a couple Neil Young albums, but I'm going to listen to another one anyway. So I'm going to go down that. I'll give it a 3. On recommend, I'll give it a 5. I just can't think of why you would not want to recommend someone experience Gordon Lightfoot at least once. And this seems like an incredibly solid album to do so, right? I even recognized, I think, half the songs on it. And it sounded great. And despite that I probably won't go back and put this on for a re-listen often, I'm going to give it a 4 or 5. Like, again, it just was smooth. It just flowed by. It sounded great. Solid album. Over to you, Darren.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Funny, I guess few quick things I learned. One was apparently, not this album, but the record of Edmund Fitzgerald. He was working on that album, recording it in a studio, and Stomping Tom Connors was next door recording there. And he was just playing the melody, not singing at all, no lyrics yet. He was just working on this melody, and I guess it was Stomping Tom was like, "Hey, Gordon, that's gonna be a hit, buddy. It's gonna be a hit. Like you gotta release that one. It's gonna be huge." And like with no lyrics. So anyway, give Stompin' Tom a little credit. Love Stompin' Tom. Love that guy. Also, just everybody knows about Taylor Swift re-recording her albums, although she just bought her masters back. But she was not the first to do this. His old label, Union, I think they were called, wanted to start. He was getting successful, and they owned the rights to some older stuff. They started to re-release some singles and some old albums, and so he's like, "Screw that! They're going to take my money." So he re-recorded all the songs all the hits, I should say, not every song, but all the hits, and made a best of Gord's Gold. It did have some of his newer stuff with his Reprise Warner label, but he literally just totally Taylor Swifted them reverse. Sweet. And re-recorded it and released it. That became huge, and none of the other albums sold. So good on him. And again, I mentioned he lived in Canada, stayed in Canada, and that album, Sundown, was recorded in Toronto. So all Canadian, and that was cool at that time because it was very hard. So good for him to staying there. But for me, I mean, the scores, influence, that is always a hard one for us. Like, it didn't influence me a lot. I remember it, but not really. And even, but folk music in general, but he was influential, especially within Canada. I can't go perfect here, but I think I'm a 4 on that one. Recommend, right with the other guys. I think it is one of these classic albums, and this is his most commercially successful. Now, you could have different tastes, and please listen to his other ones. Many are great. He claims his best albums were his last few, recorded up into the 2000s. So I haven't listened to those, but give it a try. But anyway, I think 4.5 for recommend. And overall, I'm coming in at a 4. I think I really appreciate what it is. It could probably been all 5s really for what it is. But I mean, I think there is, it does sound a little repetitive at times. There's not much variation on the album and a few things like that. I'm not slighting it really. It's an amazing, beautiful album. Highly recommended. Like I said, get relaxed, whatever you got to do. That's smoking a joint, but enjoy that album. It was a great one. But anyway, thanks, guys. So now we are on to the next month's pick. So Scott Coates, you are up. So what are we going to listen to here in the upcoming month?
Thanks, Darren. I was all over the board with my pick, and the last few weeks I watched the new Billy Joel documentary called And So It Goes. It's about 5 hours. It's 2.5 hour parts, roughly. I really like Billy Joel, and I realized, man, I like Billy Joel more than I even realized I like Billy Joel. And so I was going to pick The Stranger, which was sort of a big breakout album by him, and half the songs are hit singles on it. So I was really close to picking The Stranger. And then as I was watching it, they have, superstars and well-known musicians throughout the documentary talk about Billy Joel. And one guy that kept surprising me was Nas. Nas kept being in there, and I was like, Nas? Like, why the hell's Nas talking about Billy Joel? But I guess he's from New York, etc. So then I'm like, have we ever done Nas? And I searched Sonic Collective Nas, and turns out on one of my picks back in May 2022, I picked Joy Division, and I used to always list other albums I was considering. I was considering the Illmatic, so I'm like, you know what? I've never listened to a Nas album. So many people cite him as the GOAT and just that he's incredible. I've never listened to one of his albums, so we're going to listen to his debut album, Illmatic by Nas. Came out in 1994. He was 20.
Oh, yeah.
And apparently it wasn't a big deal at the time. It only sold, I think, 50,000 copies. But it's in the next decade, it went on to cross 2 million copies. And it's been noted as, like, best hip-hop album of all time. Rolling Stone put it at number 44 on the 500 greatest albums of all time. It was added to the Library of Congress, I guess, for National Recording and Registry of being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. So, yeah, it's all about
Nazir.
Gang rivalries, desolation, growing up in urban poverty, etc. So it is Nas Illmatic. Oh, you have it right there. There we go, boys.
Karen's
that is our listen for the month of September.
Sweet. I'm stoked for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great pick. And it's funny, you start Billy Joel. I'm like, hey, cool, Billy Joel. We've never done Billy Joel.
Yeah,
and I'm
he
like,
did
I
a
wonder what
sleight
album
of
he's going to
hand.
pick.
It was Billy Joel to Nas.
Yeah. And there's, somebody else is going to turn this off and have no idea. They're going to listen to Billy Joel all month and then come back and be like, what the fuck? How did it turn into Illmatic by Nas?
Close. Yeah.
Yeah. No, great album. I do own that one and love it. I haven't really put it on a lot lately.
Never listened to it.
Awesome. But anyway, thanks to all you guys. Always fun. Such a great group. But that is it for this month, for the August of 2025. I said that really weird. This is the Sonic Collective signing off for the last time in August. Anyway, thanks so much, Scott, Alan, Owen, Greg, Pearson, his dad, and everybody else. And thanks for listening, everybody. Sonic Collective signing up.
There's a little room on my list for tonight. Will you be the one to fill it in?
Hey, thanks for joining us on the Sonic Collective. where we've explored the music, the history, and the impact of some of the greatest albums of all time. We hope you've enjoyed our discussions and gained new insights and appreciation for the music you and we love. Join us next month for another exciting album, and until then, keep listening to great music.